In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at two short-lived techniques that we use to squeeze more music onto a single disc. So what I've got here is a 2-hour 33 1/3 RPM vinyl record and a 2-hour 24-minute and 24-second compact disc, and both of these can be played on normal equipment. So let's see how they did it. Right, now let's start with this compact disc. This came out in 1987, at which point the maximum playtime of your average compact disc would have been 74 minutes, and yet this particular disc contains 2 hours, 24 minutes and 24 seconds, approximately double that. So if I was to say to you, you have to come up with a way of getting double the amount of audio on a compact disc that could be played back in a standard compact disc player, how would you go about doing that? It does sound a little bit tricky, doesn't it? But what if I was to say the audio you're putting on here is a recording from 1953? That makes it a lot easier. I'll put the CD in and I'll let it try and explain itself.
Vous allez écouter un compact disque d'une nouvelle génération permettant di ascoltare un compact disc di una nuova generazione, il quale vi permette di raddoppiare la durata.
Okay, now not the greatest of help to everyone watching this video, but after a couple of minutes of that, an English language version comes in on the left-hand channel, and it sounds like this.
You are about to hear a new generation of compact discs, which makes it possible to double the listening time.
Right, so let's isolate that and have a listen to what he's talking about.
You are about to hear a new generation of compact discs, which makes it possible to double the listening time of mono recordings. At the present time, CD players have no automatic switch, and therefore you should proceed manually as follows. If your amplifier is equipped with a mono switch, push the CD into the CD player, switch off the right channel and press the mono switch. In this way you can listen to the first part of the CD. When you have finished listening to the first part, take the CD out of the player, switch off the left channel without forgetting to switch on the right channel again, and push the CD back into the player. The mono switch remains pressed down. You can then listen to the second part of the CD. If your amplifier has no mono switch, neither the right nor the left channel have to be switched off. After pushing in the CD, all you need to do is to alter the balance on your amplifier, first to the left and then to the right side. In this case, you will only be able to hear out of the left or right speaker at any one time. With this new generation of CDs, you can listen to one CD for more than 2 hours.
Okay, so in summary, it's a normal CD. It's a stereo CD, plays in any normal compact disc player, except the left-hand channel plays the first half of the recording in mono, and then the right-hand channel plays the second half of the recording in mono, and you have to switch between them to hear the whole recording. I'd say calling that a new generation of CD is really over-egging it a bit, and I've just got to go back and play a little bit of that recording just once more.
Switch off the left channel without forgetting to switch on the right channel again.
It's that whole without forgetting part. I'm assuming this has been translated from another language. It doesn't quite scan right. It sounds like a double negative. Perhaps I am supposed to forget, or am I not supposed to forget? Of course I know what he's talking about. Let me give you a quick demonstration. These two mono recordings on one compact disc system was used for another set, Wagner's Ring Cycle, that came out at the same time. That reduced that down to 7 compact discs. It was reviewed in the New York Times, and they mentioned that that came with a shrink-wrapped switch box on the front that you attached up to your compact disc player, and you'd select the left channel for the start of it, the right channel for the end of it, and there was a further third position that was for your normal stereo compact discs. Now, believe it or not, someone had tried this idea a couple of years before, but Philips had blocked its release because they were planning on using the Philips pressing plants to make the CDs, so they refused to make them because they were annoyed that this was messing around with their Red Book CD standard, talking about the fact that previous technologies like quadraphonic had got very confused by all the different systems that were out there, so they wanted compact disc just to be compact disc. But with this one, they couldn't stop them from releasing it because they used their own pressing plants. It won't surprise anyone to hear that this wasn't around for very long. I think this is one of perhaps only 2 titles that came out on this format. And it's easy to see why. I mean, it's a pretty flawed idea, either requiring somebody to mess around with the settings on their amplifier every time they want to listen to this CD, or perhaps use the switch box that was shrink wrapped to the front of some of these, attach that up to your CD player, reach around the back of the CD player, switching between the 3 different positions depending upon what kind of CD you want to play. Sounds like the kind of thing someone would come up with on Kickstarter. And of course reliant on the fact that the recordings on here have to be longer than 75 minutes and have to be in mono. Yeah, it's just not something that was really going to last very long on its own, but I think the thing that really killed it off was the fact that CDs came down in price. The whole idea of this thing is that it's supposed to be cheaper to sell this set with perhaps even a switch box on the front than it would have been to sell 2 separate compact discs in a little set. Well, that changed pretty quickly. CDs came down in price, so a 2 CD set made a lot more sense than this. So the next one, Trimicron. So this is a 33 1/3 RPM stereo record, 12-inch, that contains 2 hours worth of audio. And the idea behind this one, well, in my opinion, it's got a lot more merit. Let's have a look at it. Right, now first off, I've got to say this is a particularly attractive logo in my opinion, but it's very much a thing of its time. This is the early to mid 1970s when this came out. You can see here, triple duration, 1 disc, 2 hours. It wasn't on the market for very long, but it was relatively successful for a short period of time. You can see here there were some other titles that were available using this technology. If you go on the Discogs website, you'll see some of those listed, and of course they're all classical music titles, which is what the format was designed for. Your average pop record would have fitted on a normal length LP. This is just for your longer length pieces of music. Now if you go on Wikipedia under the unusual types of gramophone records, you won't see it mentioned, but that's on the English language version. If you go to the French language version of the same page, then Trimicron does get a mention on there. The gatefold sleeve on my copy is falling apart a little bit, but you can see in here on the left hand side it goes into the music that's on the disc, and then on the right hand side it goes into the details about how they went about creating it. First off, it's the brainchild of this guy. I like this guy. He looks like he's seen some stuff in his time, and he's saying here that he got sick of listening to classical music and having to flip it over when he got halfway through and having his music cut up into little segments. So he came up with this system using this massive machine that looks like something Ming the Merciless would have used in a Buster Crabbe Flash Gordon series, and that makes the Trimicron system possible. And the idea is, according to his technology, that he was able to put triple duration, as he said, on it. So you can see here 55 minutes on side A of this record, and to achieve that 55 minutes, he's removed the section between the tracks. So you can look at the pictures here, you can see that you've got the track, which is the white section, and the black section, the bit between them. He says he's just removed the section between the tracks, and therefore that being twice the width of the track that the stylus goes down, he's able to triple the amount of audio that you can put on a standard 12-inch record. Now, I'm no record mastering expert, but to me something doesn't seem right with those diagrams. I've reproduced them a little bit here so I can explain what the problem is. Imagine this is the stylus of the record. Now, a stylus travels in a groove, and as it goes up and down each side, that's what creates the stereo audio. So on this case, this is the stylus here. It's going down the groove here, and it's travelling down this bit here. Now the crossed out sections are where it doesn't travel. That's the section between the track as it goes round. It comes back round again, and the stylus carries on down here like this. Okay, that's fine, that's a normal record. Now what they reckon they've done with this Trimicron idea is they've done away with these crossed out sections here, so that now the stylus travels down here like that, and then once it's gone round it travels down there like that. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because if that wall is the right hand channel, saying that wall's the left, well, when it goes down the next one, the right hand channel then becomes the left hand channel on that one, and that wouldn't work, because you'd be hearing sort of the audio from the previous revolution on one side while you're hearing the next audio. It just, something's not quite right here. I'll tell you what I need to do. I need to break out the macro lens, and let's have a look at one of those records in close up. To have something to compare the Trimicron record against, I've got a couple of other discs out here. Superfunk 3 is a relatively modern record, and modern by its standards in that it doesn't pack the tracks on each side. So we've got 4 tracks on side A and 5 on side B. Whereas this 1980s compilation, this is when they really did pack them in. So here we've got 8 tracks per side. Now let's start off with the modern record, and we'll just have a bit of a close-up on that. And you can see that it's a little bit dusty on here already, and I've got to say I just got this out of the shrink wrap to take this picture. I hadn't used this one yet, so it just shows you how dirty these things are when they come out of the paper cases that they're stored in. But anyway, let's zoom in on it and have a good look. So you can see here, it's quite clear. We've got the tracks, we've got the space between the tracks. And you can see that that looks very similar to the diagram that was on the Trimicron sleeve. You've got the space between the tracks being quite a bit wider than the actual track where the audio is recorded. Okay, now let's move over to that 1980s compilation where everything should be packed a lot closer together. It'll be interesting to see how big the gaps are between the tracks on this one. So as we zoom in, you'll see it looks a little bit messy here. In fact, you can make out the ridges and the tracks, but they almost seem about the same width as one another. Now, if you happen to have an electron microscope to hand, you can get quite a bit closer in on a record. You can see here the stylus going down the groove of this particular disc. This is from the Applied Science channel. Ben and I know each other, and I'm sure he's quite happy with me showing this clip on here. I'm just going to show you a still out of it though. Go to his site to see the full video. One thing to note here is how the walls, or the width of the gap between the stylus track, changes depending upon the audio that's being played. So you can see there on the right, that's quite a big area, whereas on the left, that's quite a lot thinner. Another thing to note from this is it's a little bit more complicated than my simplistic drawing on that whiteboard earlier on. It's not really the tops of the trench that are creating the sound. It's the walls that are at approximately 45-degree angle to one another, and it's the movement of the stylus within that valley that creates the audio. I'm quite sure the very top of that ridge doesn't really have much of a bearing on it at all. Right, so let's have a look at the Trimicron record now. Now, that 1980s compilation, that held 30 minutes aside. This holds approximately 60. So somehow they managed to pack twice the amount of audio onto here, and it looked like there wasn't any room left on that 1980s one. So let's see how they've gone about doing it. Well, as we zoom in here, you'll notice something straight away. It's a very uniform line going down there, not like the electron microscope version or the other records I showed you that moved around all over the place. These are very straight. It seems like that's the system. It hasn't removed the central barrier between tracks. It's just somehow made it very straight and uniform, and therefore must be compressing down the amount of space that each track has for the audio. Let's have a listen. I didn't notice anything particularly compromised about the audio while listening to it, other than the fact, of course, it is very much plagued by crackles and pops, so it just needs a good clean, this disc. So I'll give it a clean, and then I'll play you a little snippet of this with a direct feed. Yeah, whatever I did, I just couldn't get rid of those crackles, although I've reduced them down a little bit. The only thing I've noticed about this disc is when you play it, you do have to turn the volume up just a little bit more than you would with a normal record. I probably listen to a normal record at about 60 on my amp. On this, I have to listen to it at 70, but there's still plenty of room beyond there, so it's not like I have to max it out or anything. And it does still seem like the audio has quite a bit of dynamic range as well. You can see this represented in this capture of the audio here. We've got the waveform and those vertical lines that go straight up and down. Those are the crackles and pops, but you can see also there is quite a bit of dynamic range there. It goes reasonably loud, it goes very quiet at one point towards the end there. Although apparently, according to the French Wikipedia article, these discs do suffer from reduced dynamic range, and perhaps most importantly, they've got a reduced signal on them, meaning the volume of them is reduced by 40% over a normal record, which meant that people had to have a record player that was a very quiet one, that also had a good new diamond stylus on there to trace the track around, and it was a little bit of a compromise too far perhaps for many people. As far as ideas go, I don't think this was a bad one, and you've got to consider it came out in the early 1970s and it actually was quite successful in the market as well. I think there were over 30 titles came out that use this Trimicron system. You can understand why. The vast majority of people playing music back at that point were doing it off a record player. So if you wanted to play, for example, the first track on side A here of 50 minutes and 54 seconds all in one long stretch unbroken, then this would have been the only way most people would have had to go about doing that. In fact, the next chance that the vast majority of people got to listen to a 51-minute piece of music in one go would have been when the compact disc came out. I suppose the reason that this will have died off though is because it's a proprietary technology. No doubt the chap behind this wanted to license it out to people. Even if he didn't ask for money on that, I'd imagine that you'd have to change all the equipment that you use for making records to enable them to be able to produce these. So you can understand why it didn't take off beyond the initial company that were producing these, but still doesn't mean it wasn't a good idea. And yes, okay, so the sound quality is a little bit compromised. You have to turn it up a little bit more. But I think my mum, for example, listening to her radiogram in the mid-1970s, wouldn't have minded that at all. Turn it up a couple of notches, it probably wouldn't have sounded any different to any other record she put on there. It's only recently that people are getting really obsessive about these high-end 180-gram audiophile records. Back then, you just chucked a record on a record player and that's what it was. It was just the way that you listen to music. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed having a look at these two extended length formats here today, but that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching. I've realised with both of these recordings containing compositions by Beethoven, this video is quite likely to prompt a few people to repeat that oft-told apocryphal tale about the length of a compact disc. You've probably heard it. It goes like this. The fact that the CD is 74 minutes in length is down to the fact that the chairman of Sony, his favourite piece of music was Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which was 74 minutes in length. So he insisted on a CD being able to hold the whole of that recording. It's a nice tale. As far as I can make out, it doesn't have any basis in fact. Snopes says it's unconfirmed. In fact, on Gizmodo a few years ago, they tried to publish this as fact. They put an article up there saying the reason why compact discs are 74 minutes in length or something like that. And after they published it, one of the people from Philips who'd been involved in the development of compact disc got in touch with them and said, no, that's nonsense, it's nothing to do with that. The fact is, Philips wanted an 11.5cm CD. Sony wanted a bigger CD and they ended up compromising on 12 centimetres, and it just so happened that 12 centimetres holds 74 minutes worth of audio. And to further back this up, if you go looking for recordings of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, you'll find that they don't get up to 74 minutes in length anyway.